Within the gate of the demon realm, a creature is seen walking. Its glinted eyes are staring fixated on a group of plants that are buried in the ground. The plants, due to sensing the presence of the creature, climbs out of the earth and faces the approaching creature. There is a standoff between both group, with their eyes glowing fiercely. They then lounge towards each other to initiate their attack, and we then get to see what the creatures really look like. The two groups of creatures are the little version of themselves, with one being a walking potato plant and the other a little snake with 2 legs. We see the shadow of 2 people, and one of them comments from the side asking the other person besides themselves who he thinks is going to win today. The man with a bird head replies that they should just wait and see how the fight goes, while the woman wearing the skull of an animal comments that the fight is especially brutal today. We see the little monsters playfully fighting at their front, with 2 of the potato plants carrying their brother to give the little snake what the man with the bird head calls the Superman punch, which the snake dodges multiple times and then gets hit once, and we see the fight then comes to an end. The little snake is seen to be crying and runs off while the potatoes are celebrating their victory, while the girl wearing the skull mask comments that this is their 99th victory out of 99 matches. The scene shifts to a handsome young man who comments that the fight had turned into a full-blown fight today. A potato creature walks up to the handsome man who is our protagonist, and he asks if he should hurry up while dipping his fingers into a jelly-like substance and rubs it on the body of the potato creature while they are seen to be in what appears to be a garden. A little girl with a bird on her head shouts towards a man telling him that she is hungry while asking her uncle how much longer it would take for the food to get ready, and the man tells her that she should wait a bit as he is almost done, and that she is definitely going to love the food while he displays his cooking skills. The little girl tells him to wait while she gives him a special ingredient to add to the food, which turns out to be eggs, and that it would taste bland without it. The man agrees and cracks open the eggs, pouring them into a frying pan while displaying his cooking skill called double fire. After a variety of intense movements that leaves the little girl awed, the man is seen holding a plate of food and tells everyone that it's ready and that they should come eat, while he then sprinkles sesame seeds on top of the food. Our hero is seen walking towards them while the man with the bird head and the girl wearing a skull mask are already at the table looking at the food, which is fried rice and eggs. Everybody is seen to gather around the table, including the animals, and the chef from earlier tells them to enjoy their meal. The little girl promptly shoves a spoonful of food into her mouth. The food is so good that it causes fireworks to start displaying in her head, while she tells the chef, whom she calls uncle, that the food is really tasty, who then replies that she should eat as there's still more of it. The girl with the skull mask comments that he really does know how to cook, which leaves the chef blushing and replying to her that it is such an honor for it to suit her taste while calling her sis. Our protagonist decided to have a taste of the food for himself to see how it is, when he notices that his little potato pet has fallen asleep. We then see the little girl and a white bird fighting over food, with the little girl telling it that she was going to help it eat. At the side we see the man with the bird head pouring his food into his mouth without bothering to use a spoon. Our hero looks at this, and seeing the happiness on everybody's faces, he gets happy too, which leads him to smile, while thinking to himself that the life in the demon realm is not so bad. We get to know the reason why the group are in the realm. One day, a mysterious cross radiating dark red color light like that of blood appeared in the sky on Earth. Within it, monsters poured out in mass droves. The monsters were from the demon realm, and the light that appeared in the sky was the portal leading to the demon realm. Their arrival spelt doom for mankind as the monsters attacked and killed humans without mercy. Cities were destroyed and high-rise buildings were razed to the ground, and despair began to set in for humanity. And when mankind was on the brink of annihilation, the heavens showed pity on the creature below by granting some individuals with powers, and these individuals are called the Hunters. They are the beings who received special abilities derived from mana. Thanks to them, with their great powers and might, mankind was finally able to fight back. As time passes by and the cities that were once destroyed by the arrival of the monster from the demon realm were finally being rebuilt. Although there were still some problems, at least mankind was finally able to get some breathing space, and some people were able to enjoy a peaceful life. However, there was just too little of the hunters that had awakened naturally compared to the total population of humans on Earth, and with that problem started to arise, with many of the hunters dying under the jaws and fangs of the monsters. To combat the issue and to stop the relentless constant attacks of the monsters, humans had to come up with a new way to fight, and so the artificial beings were created. They were known as the Chimera Hunters, and they were created to counter the monsters' relentless attacks. to create such beings inmates on death roll or animal carcasses with the minerals that could be found in the gates and also with the cells of the monsters were used together for the experiment. This was the effort made by mankind to survive, and it made the mass production of chimera hunters to become possible. This could even be said to be the ideal combination of the scientific and hunter community that dramatically lowered the mortality rates of the hunters and saved countless lives. With the newfound hope, the world was gradually able to start returning back to the way it was before the monster attacks. During a night in one of the illegal chimera laboratory, two men in a scientist's clothes were waking down the 18th basement floor of the high-rank chimera storage room, with one of them telling the other man that they just had to check on one of the chimeras and then they can go home. The other replies to his colleague, telling him that the chimera number 17 was beginning to rot. On getting to the cell that held the creature, the bespectacled scientist tells his colleague not to get too close. The other man replies that it's all right as whatever was in the cell has its brain broken already and it couldn't move without orders. The torch points on the creature in the cell, and we get to see a huge chimera beast that is chained to a cage with eyes on its body and scythe-like blades protruding from its hands, and one of its hands were rotting just as the bespectacled scientist had said. The bespectacled scientist wonders if the rotten arm could be a side effect from the experiment. But the other man comments that what could be scary about a creature that can't even see what's in front of it. The bespectacled man, due to his fear, tells his colleague to pass it as it was going to be scrapped anyway, and the other man agrees, and soon they walk away from there and goes to the lab director's office. They tell the lab director that number 17 is hopeless now and that its body has almost completely been destroyed, and if it had been the other ones they would have been dead already. The director asks them how long the beast could live, and the bespectacled man replies that it could live for about a month at most, on which his other colleague agrees. The director thinks for a moment and tells the men that if it was so, then they should make it join the gate sealing operation and have it guard the back of the hunters when they are returning, but they shouldn't give it the order to return. Some time passes and we see the gate closing operation has already begun in the Rocky Mountains zone of the demon realm, and the chimera beast is seen to be battling a group of flying monsters that swoop down from the sky with their mouth wide open and jaws filled with rows upon rows of saw-like teeth to attack the chimera beast. The beast brandishes its sharp claws and swipe at the monsters in the air. The strike is so powerful that the flying monsters are reduced to chunks of flesh and blood that scatters in the air. The ground cracks open as a huge monster billowed out of the earth and roars terrifyingly to the sky. The newly emerged monster is huge and gigantic that the chimera on the ground is like an ant before it, with the size difference being a comparison to that of an elephant to an ant. Not to be outdone by its momentum, the chimera beast applies a great amount of pressure to its feet that leaves cracks on the earth and then leaps off the ground, rising high above the head of the huge monster. With a swipe of its bladed claws, chunks and chunks of flesh gets torn off the huge monster that flies all around the battlefield. The chimera raises up its head and gathers mana to launch an attack at the huge monster. After charging it up, it turns its head towards the huge monster and releases the attack, which flies and hits the monster. The attacking ray was so powerful that the monster is seen screaming out of agony due to the lightnings contained in the attack. After some time, the attack dies down and we see the aftermath of the battle. There is a deep trench on the ground leading from the chimera all the way to the mountains and cleaves right through the mountains to the other side. A group of hunters are seen gathering around, with one of them commenting that it is amazing and another comments that it erased all the monsters in one move, and it is as expected of an S-Class Chimera Hunter. The hunter with blonde hair turns to look back and tells his colleagues that the gate still shows no sign of closing, and the leader tells him not to worry too much about it, that no matter the amount of monsters that attacks them, they will be able to handle it as long as they have that S-Class Chimera with them. We then get to see an aerial view of the battlefield with the ground having been destroyed, and there is a deep and large trench that stretches all the way from the battlefield to the mountains in the distance. The leader of the hunters tells his colleagues that they just have to take care of the small fries that escape while pulling out his sword and cuts down a flying monster with a cool move. After a while of battling, the blonde-hair hunter tells his colleagues that the red gate is showing signs of closing. The leader comments that finally the time is here and tells them to get out of the gate and that they will be going home early. The chimera is still battling waves upon waves of gigantic monsters and is oblivious to what was happening behind it, and we see the female hunter in the group ask her leader if they were not going to bring the chimera back home with them, and the leader tells her to let it be and that they were told not to bring it back with them. The girl is shocked and asked if it wasn't expensive. The leader replies that he was told that it was going to die soon anyways, The girl comments that she is feeling a bit sorry for it, that if it had not been for the chimera then there would have been a lot of casualties this time around. The leader tells her not to sympathize with it, that it is technically a non-living thing and that it only knows how to follow orders and that they are monsters. We then get to see that although the chimera is slaying the monsters, it still sustains some serious injuries, with one of the eyes in its arm getting pierced by the claws of a monster. During the fight, the chimera begun to remember the orders it had received before they set out for the Red Gate closing operation. It was told that the mission this time was to secure the return of the hunters, and that there is nothing else besides that, and once the mission is completed then it doesn't have to come back. The chimera loses one of its arm but was still able to defeat the huge monster it was battling and got drenched by the blood of the monster. During its battle, the chimera thought to itself that the return of the hunters has been completed and that its return was not allowed. With great effort, the chimera was finally able to slay all the monsters in the Red Gate, with there being no casualties among the hunters. The total number of monsters that it had killed was 1,823. Despite the fight having ended, the chimera had sustained a lot of serious injuries, and it finally succumbed to its injuries. During its final moments, number 17's memories that had been erased during the experimental period replayed in its head. It turns out that it had once been a normal human who got kidnapped at the age of 9, as its memory starts to replay in its head like a tape of a cassette. Number 17's brain has been broken during the experiment, so it wasn't able to understand the meaning of the scenes it was seeing, but it still looked at them. His past life. The memory began from 79 years ago, when it was abandoned in an orphanage, to after 9 years, when he had been scolded by the director of the orphanage for hitting his friend with a rock because he has been made fun of. The director told him that they couldn't take care of him anymore, and he was then chased out of orphanage into the cold world outside. While walking on the now filled ground, he tripped and fell to the ground at the feet of a group of men, who comments that children always run up to them whenever they come to the slums. It turns out that the men were a group of human traffickers who sold him to an illegal chimera laboratory. We see the young boy being tied up to an operating table where a scientist asks if he was the new experimental subject. He then asks what number he was, to which another scientist nearby replies that he is the number 17. The leading scientist then commands them to make it so that it wouldn't be able to run away. He tells the nearby scientists to record down the experimental data, which he quickly jolts down in his notebook, that number 17 was injected with an S+ class silkworm cells. The leading scientist then tells them that they should wait and observe how he reacts to it. After some time, the group of men were surprised to find out that there were no side effects, which one of the scientists comments that although there were no side effects, he had gained some special abilities, but his human external appearance and personality were still maintained. The leading scientist then comments that it seems like he possesses a unique constitution and tells the others that they should keep administering him with anything they could until there was a reaction. The memory then shifts to after 5 years, and we get to see that the young boy has turned 15. He is seen standing in front of a group of people who were attacked by a group of flying monsters. The monsters swoop down towards him, and he raises his hands to gather mana to perform a skill. The skill is then released towards the group of flying masters, and it obliterates them into thin air. The residual power behind his attack cleaves a trench on the ground towards the distance, while a woman holding her daughter gets up to thank him for saving them. The other hunter around gets up and tells him that he is sorry that a kid like him has to carry all the responsibilities, to which the boy replies that it was all right. The memory then shifts to after another 5 years, with the boy having turned 20. After a recent battle, the boy is left standing there thinking to himself, wondering why he was there and what he was doing. A man in a white coat wearing glasses is seen walking up to him and calling him number 17. The man then asked him why he was stopping and if he was confused with his memories. The scientist then laughs and tells him that finally the side effects were showing, and this left the boy even more confused, wondering what the man by side effects. Another 5 years elapses, and we see a scientist writing it down in a notebook that the result of administering more 500 different monster cells in 15 years has created a hunter of at least S-class with abilities that are unmeasurable. We see the young boy who had turned 25 being tied to a chair and is undergoing a transformation, with half of his body having turned into a monster. And the scientist continues that number 17 is their laboratory's best masterpiece. The memory flashes forward over 34 years, which is 20 years before the Red Gate closing operation. And we see a girl asking if number 17 was nice while holding up a piece of meat. The meat is snatched up quickly by a chimera beast, which gives the girl a fright. The girl then turns towards a group of people and tells them that she had told them that it'll eat, and we see wreckage around, which was a result of a recent battle with a group of monsters. The memory then shifts to the day of the battle in the Red Gate, with the Chimera having its final thoughts that the all missions have been completed, and then its consciousness faded and it finally dies. Sunset in the Rocky Mountains is filled with desolation, and with the carcasses of countless monsters that were decomposing and littering the ground of the demon realm. A piece of bone that is located in the spine lifts off the ground and starts shining. Suddenly we see a transformation take place as the bone starts growing and reconstructing to become a full spinal cord, which then turns into a skeleton, and then blood, flesh and tendons start regenerating on it at an alarming rate. In no time, a naked person is seen curled up in the intense bright light, who then lands on their feet. It turns out to be number 17, who has resurrected and turned back into his human form. He is surprised and asks himself what is going on while looking at his hands. He wonders if he had become a human again, but judging from the fact that the monster cells in his body are still active, he can't say for sure that he is completely human. His fingernails then elongated to become terrifying knife-like claws. While he thinks to himself that quite some time has passed since the operation, and seeing how the lab hasn't come to retrieve him, then he has been discarded. His claws then retracts back into his hands as he looks at his hand and thinks to himself that even the experimental number on his wrist is also gone, and does this means that he doesn't have to run from the lab anymore. He then says that the reason why his body turns out to be like this must be because of the fire-type monster's power, as they say that if the core isn't destroyed then it can survive up to 3 times. And if the scientist hadn't said that human cells can't fuse with phoenix cells. But he is certain that his body has reverted back to its prime, and maybe because the side effects of the experiments are gone that he feels much better. He says that ever since the side effects began it always felt like there was a fog in his head, and even the spells that were engraved in him to prevent his betrayal have all disappeared. He then says that if his life as number 17 is truly over, then maybe now he can finally live as a human. He thinks to himself that 17 was just a number that was arbitrarily given to him by the lab, and that his real name is Cheon Daewoo, which the lab director had told him during one of his lectures on helping others. Cheon Daewoo then thinks that how is a stray cat supposed to save people, and now he'll just get going. He says he had thought about revenge, but revenge needs a target to be in front of you. And besides, it feels so long ago and the fire of revenge doesn't burn in him anymore like it used to, and there's no way that he will be able to live as a human immediately anyways. He thinks to himself that as long as he keeps living he'll definitely run into them at some point, and by then he'll think of what to do when that time comes. He turns to look below and sees that he's naked. He then comments that for now he should first try to live as a human, and wonders when last he had wore clothes while walking away from the battlefield. He wanders into a forest and sees a river ahead, but was not sure what to make clothes out of. He then decides to have a look around first and immediately spots a monster that was badly injured and lying on the ground. Cheon Daewoo then wonders if there had been a territorial dispute, and that the monster looked quite strong with no obvious injuries on its body. He looks and sees dark purple blood coming out of its body, and then says probably the creature had died from poisoning. He stretches out his hand while saying that this was good and that he happened to need leather anyways, and then his arm transforms into a sharp blade. He then remembers what he had learned from the lab, that first of all he'll cut the belly vertically and insert the dissection scissors through the armpit. As he then begins to make the cut, and immediately purple gas bursts out of the belly of the creature. Cheon Daewoo is surprised as the gas was poison. He then puts his hand into the body of the creature and discovers that the poison has no effects on him. He then decides to skin it, and after a while he has managed to skin the fur off the body of the creature, and he praises his efforts. He then goes to the nearby river to wash the fur, and is surprised to find that the fur wasn't soft but rather stiff. He then says the reason might be because it is a monster's hide, and it hasn't been treated yet, until when a light bulb suddenly lights up in his head and he gets an idea. He puts the fur on the ground and starts pummeling it out with blows rapidly. He wonders if hides are supposed to be tanned in such a way, but then resigns to it. After a while we see that he was able to finally make it become soft. He comments that the size is also okay. The monster lying on the ground shakes and its head start flaming due to the comments of Cheon Daewoo. It turns out that it was still alive and had woken up for quite some time. Cheon Daewoo roughly cuts the leather into shape by tearing it, and we see fireworks exploding on the head of the creature with its eyes wide open, not believing what it was seeing. With a punch through the leather fur, Cheon Daewoo was finally able to wrap himself up properly while asking if it was okay. After having a look at himself, he finds out that it fits his body perfectly, but looks to find that he wasn't able to wash all the poisons out fully from the clothes. He says he's too lazy, so he'll just wear it that way, and the creature on the ground gets mad and calls out to him, making a hawking noise. Cheon Daewoo is surprised to find that the creature wasn't dead, and the creature shakes its head while making bird sound. Cheon thinks that it seems the creature is able to under what he's saying. He then comments that even though it had postmortem stiffness due to the fact that it had died, but the fact that it is still alive means that it is one of the immortal type. He then thinks to himself that if it had been his past self, then he would have killed it without hesitation because he was a hunter, but the opponent is already too weak to pose any threat to him, so there would be no need to kill it. Cheon then tells the creature while looking at it that it is lucky and so was he, and that this was his second life, so they should live it well. He turns to walk away while telling the creature that if fate allows it, then they'll meet again somewhere. After leaving the creature, Cheon walks into a cave while thinking to himself that now that the clothing problem has been solved, the next thing he needs is a house. While walking, the ground cracks and a huge centipede monster bursts out of the ground before him and shrieks. Cheon calmly puts his hands behind him while gazing at the centipede monster as it swoops down to devour him. He comments that it's so dark here, and with a swipe of his hand he effortlessly deals with the centipede by separating its head from its body. Cheon turns to leave with his hands behind his back and comments that he'll pass on the cave, and with that he begins to venture into different terrains in the demon realm looking for a suitable place to build a house. He goes to a snowy mountain and deals with the inhabitants, which are a group of snow apes. After looking and strolling around, he comments that finding food will be difficult while living there and passes out on it. He then goes to a jungle with smelly plants and passed out on it too. He goes to a cave with moss dripping from the walls, but he thinks it's too humid and also pass out on it. He goes to a volcanic summit and comments that it's too hot and also pass out on it, and then finally he gets to a cliff which leaves him breathless as the scenery below is breathtaking. He thinks to himself that he had never thought he would find nature to be beautiful. Deciding to have a look around, he leaps from the top of the cliff and lands steadily on the ground by the shore of the river. He looks and comments that the water is clear and there are lots of fishes, and we see some fishes swimming towards him. They leap out the water and we see that they look hideous with fangs protruding from their mouth. But Cheon is unconcerned as he thinks that if he catches one of the fishes at a time and grills it at the spot, that it'll feel like camping. He then says that since there is a natural fish farm, then building a house and living nearby wouldn't be so bad. With a look around, he sees that there are flowers in the place and that the air is fresh. Satisfied, he comments that the place is good while feeling content. In a faraway place, we see the air start fuzzing and lightning starts flickering in midair. In no time, a gate opens and something flies out of it and crashes to the ground, kicking up dust. Within the dust, we see a robot standing up with its eyes glowing deep red as it looks around and asks if this is the demon realm. Cheon Daewoo, after having chosen his dream location, decides to build his house on the spot. To start building his house, he needs to clear a plot for it. As he raises his hands, thin, fine threads flows out of his fingers, which he uses to swipe at the trees in the surrounding. Despite the threads being tiny, they were incomparably hard and sharp. With just the first swing, large amounts of trees were cut cleanly through as they fall to the ground. Cheon looks at the cleared part and decides that it was enough to build his house. He then gathers the good quality trees to be used as wood for building his house. With the ground covered with stomps from the fell trees, the ground become uneven and too bumpy, and with another swipe of his hand, the stomps are uprooted and the ground becomes leveled and evened. And so the building of his house commences, with Cheon first driving posts into the ground at each corner of the house. He asks himself if this is what they call free will, and that it was fun anyway, and besides, he's building his first home. After driving in the posts, he quickly lays down planks for the floor. And for the walls, since he doesn't have any nails, he decides to use slimes from snail-type monsters instead. He applies the slimes on the woods and stacks the other woods on top, while he comments that once it hardens it'll become solid as stones. But he wonders if it'll be waterproof. He then adds the finishing touch, and after the work, Cheon Daewoo gazes at his house and comments that it looks great, and even monsters won't be able to come near, and we see the view of the house, which is giving off an aura of ominous energy due to being covered with slimes from snail-type monsters and cocoon silk from silkworm larvae. Cheon says that it is quite cozy and that he likes it, but then he thinks that something is missing, as he thinks about what do houses that people usually live in have. He then remembers his time back in the lab where a scientist had showed them a video of a family and tells them that that was what a typical home looked like before the gates started appearing. And Cheon thinks to himself that in the educational videos that he saw in the lab that they usually grew something in the yard. He wonders if what he's missing is a dog, but then says that he's unable to raise one there. He thinks about making a vegetable garden, but then wonders what kind of plants would be growable in the demon realm until he remembers that during his search for a suitable place to build his house that he had gone to the snowy mountain nearby and there he had seen mandragoras and that he should plant them. The scene then shifts to the snowy mountain range, and we see Cheon walking leisurely with his hands behind his back as he comments that the habitat of the mandragoras are near the peak of the snowy mountain where the demonic energy is the thickest. He thinks to himself that it sure is snowing a lot and it is fitting for the snowy mountain. And besides, it also snowed a lot on the day he was kidnapped by the lab too, and it was so cold on that day that he had thought that being kidnapped was even better. And that there were a lot of good things about becoming a chimera as he doesn't have to worry about dying from the cold or hunger. And judging from the amount of the demonic energy in the air, he must be almost at the place. Cheon with his hands behind his back sees the plants and comments that he is glad that he found them, and that it hadn't been a wasted trip. Cheon recites the educational intro about the mandragoras and that they were extremely stress-sensitive and would die from even the slightest environmental change. And if he's going to relocate them, then a younger and more adaptable one would be better. Cheon holds one of the plant and pulls it out of the ground before lamenting that he should have covered his ears as the mandragora would scream upon coming off the earth. But to his surprise, the plant is sleeping peacefully in his hand as it comes off the ground. Surprised as he was to the development, he decides to pull another one and is met with the same peaceful face of a sleeping plant. He tries again and all three plants have the same reaction, which leaves him wondering what was happening, and besides, the cute little plants were even talking in their sleep. Cheon then realizes that the so-called mandragora's scream only happens when they are artificially grown by humans, because in the human world with low demonic energy, they're under extreme stress, and if they are forcefully pulled out, they would scream and die instantly. Cheon then thinks that the plants not screaming is understandable as they are in the demon realm, but why aren't the plants resisting as they should be trying to run at this point? He thinks that maybe they recognize him as one of them, as he does have mandragora cells implanted in his body. He then says it's good as less stress is always better while pocketing them to his belt on his waist. He thinks to himself that if they grow well, he'll ask for a few side roots and make some tea, and he can also eat their fruits as snacks, and besides, forcibly picking the fruits would make them poisonous, so he'll have to ask them nicely. Afar off in the distance, Cheon sees a gate opening, and that means that there were hunters nearby, but he doesn't know why they had come to this dangerous snowy mountain. So he'll go check out the gate and head over there. Over at the site where the gate had appeared, we see two men seething with rage, and one of them appear to be wounded, with one of them telling his colleague that they had been used as bait, which allowed the others to run. His colleague tells him to get a grip on himself as the monsters were coming back. In front of the two men, a group of bunny-looking monsters are running towards them with long fangs protruding from their mouths and brandishing claws longer than a bear's. One of the hunters cast a protective shield spell to shield them from the monster's attacks, which drains a lot of his energy. The shield was unable to hold for two as cracks began to appear on it. He tells his colleague that the barrier was about to break and that he should have kept doing odd jobs, and wonders why did he volunteer to find the chimera. The barrier finally shatters as it was unable to bear much of the monster's attacks, and the hunter yells for someone to help him, while we see behind him a light that was rapidly approaching. With a boom sound, the light crashes to the ground, sending stones flying and kicking up a huge cloud of dust. Both the monsters and the two hunters halt their movements and stare at the sight of the crash, with one of the hunters asking what that was. They see a silhouette within the cloud of dust and wonders if that was a person as it walks towards them. It turns out to be Cheon, who arrived as he had jumped all the way from the summit of the snowy mountain down to where the hunters had been battling with the monsters. The bunnies growl at him fearfully as he walks towards them, but all they could see was a visage of a terrifying monster above. As Cheon approaches, he comments that it's been a long time since he had seen bunnies. As he approaches closer, the monsters take off running, with some jumping on others due to fear. The hunters were left jaw-dropped with surprise as one comments, "No way," and the other says that B-rank monsters fled upon seeing Cheon. The hunter who had conjured the shield barrier earlier finally gets up from the ground and thanks Cheon for saving them while introducing himself and his colleague Oh Songju, while he is called Kim Tae-hoon. He then asks Cheon what his name was, to which Cheon replies him saying, Cheon Daewoo. The hunter thinks to himself that he had never heard of that name before and what was with the outfit that Cheon was wearing, and wonders if he was a reclusive hunter. His train of thought was cut as Cheon asks them what they were doing there, and just from looking at them, that they seem like D-rank hunters and that they should be aware of how dangerous the snowy mountains are. The hunter replies him that it was because of money, and tells him that there was a request to capture a chimera alive and that the pay for the mission was good. On hearing the statement, Cheon gets a shock, thinking that they had come for him, and asks them if they were really looking for a chimera for confirmation, and the hunter tells him that a lab test subject had escaped and that it was a mechanical creature that had jumped into a gate while fleeing. Cheon puts his mind to rest, thinking that if it were a mechanical creature that they were looking for, then he was not the one being chased. He thinks that it's fine, so he'll just take a gate crystal and head back. To do that, he asks them where their gears were and that they hadn't come to the demon realm empty-handed, had they. He then asks where the gate crystals were, and the wounded hunter to the right had wanted to call their betrayals their teammates, but then corrects himself and changes his word address the people who had abandoned as they. He tells Cheon that those guys took everything and ran, and that was their plan from the beginning. He says that he should have realized it when the B-rank hunter had allowed them to join the party, and remembers how they had been left behind. The barrier-casting hunter asks Cheon if he has any plans on returning soon, as they were reaching their limits soon, while the other wounded hunter asks Cheon if he knows what will happen when he gets contaminated with demonic energy. He then tells Cheon that the amount of time that a hunter could stay in the demon realm varies greatly by their awakening realm, and if they don't return to the human world in time to purify the demonic energy, most of them dies. While listening to the hunters, Cheon takes a sniff to catch the scent of the other hunters who had left. After a while, he comments that he has gotten it due to his sharp nose gotten from one of the cells that were injected into his body during the experiments. He hears the hunters telling him to take them back to the human world, while the other man says that his wife is pregnant. But Cheon takes off by jumping into the sky, and the men gets caught off mid-sentence, leaving them perplexed. They shout out to him, calling him Mr. Cheon, and asks where he was going and that he should take them too, while they shout please as Cheon disappears from their view. We then see a robot walking through the snow-filled forest, and it turns out to be the robot that had gotten into the demon realm during the time where Cheon was picking up a place to build his house. A light is seen flying high above the robot as the robot walks to a cliff and comments that the demon realm seemed dangerous. We see a group of hunters running towards the robot, with the leader telling his colleagues that the time is now and that they should rush it together all at once. The chimera robot then says to itself that if it is dangerous, then it would eliminate it, while referring to the danger, and turns towards the approaching hunters with its eyes glowing red. A blue gate was just closing as Cheon arrives at the place where the fight had taken place and wonders if he had been too late. The ground at the scene is covered with the belongings and blood of the hunters, a testament to the kind of bloody fight that had taken place. Cheon thinks to himself that probably the hunters had all ran away, even abandoning their luggage, and that the place was covered with the footprints of a child and animals. He wonders if the chimera had fought while changing its form. He then remembers what the two hunters had told him, that the chimera had been an experimental subject that had escaped from the lab and had jumped into a gate during its escape. He was also told that it was made of liquid metal and it can freely change its form. But the materials it was made from were so rare that they had to make it small, like a child or a large dog. Cheon smirks to himself while thinking that for a mechanical creature to be able to overwhelm 5 B-rank hunters by itself, then it is quite impressive. The scene shifts to the two hunters that Cheon had met previously, and we get to see one of the worker looking very pale and getting so weak that he was unable to stand on his own, so his colleague had to help me sit and rest on a tree. The colleague shakes his friend while calling his name and tells him to snap out of it. The weak hunter Song-ju tells his friend that he thinks he's done for, that all his body has been contaminated with demonic energy. His friend shouts at him and tells him that he shouldn't talk nonsense and that his child is being born next month. The weak hunter Song-ju coughs up blood while telling his friend that when he gets back he should tell his wife that he is sorry, and his friend shakes his shoulder while calling his name twice and tells him to hold on for a little longer and that miracles happen. We see the foot of Cheon walking on the snow, and on hearing the sound the hunter gets startled and turns to look and sees Cheon, who was glowing with a bright golden halo. The hunter sees the luggages being carried by Cheon, and he gets up and hurriedly walks up to him and falls on his knees and begs Cheon to please save them. Cheon is surprised and turns to look at him, and the hunter tells him that he knows that in the demon realm once a gate crystal gets taken then it is over. And then he brings out 2 pieces of paper from his pocket while telling Cheon that they are checks worth 10 million won, and he and his partner had brought it with them as their lives' worth. He tells Cheon to please sell them a gate crystal and that if they don't return now, then they will surely die. Cheon looks at the check while thinking that he doesn't have anywhere to use it right now, but he'll need it when he goes to the human world later. He then breaks a blue crystal, and we see a portal open up with the hunter thanking him profusely while saying that he would never forget the favor for the rest of his life. Cheon takes a look at the check quietly while the hunter runs up to his friend and tells him to get up quickly and that if they go fast, they might live. As the hunter approaches while carrying his wounded friend, Cheon asks them if the gate crystal wasn't originally sold for 200,000 won in the human world. The hunter was surprised by the question and thinks in his mind that what era was Cheon talking about. He then replies that the crystals are now sold for about 1 million won and asks Cheon why he was asking. Cheon puts a hand on the shoulder of the injured hunter and tells them that he feels that he had received too much, so he was going to give them this as change instead. We see a blue light start covering the injured hunter while his friend is shocked and calls out to Cheon and tells him to wait while thinking that he's injecting mana into his friend. He comments that transferring mana is something that even A-rank hunters are reluctant to do, and if mana clashes and tangles, the mana core will break and both party would die. He then thinks that if this should continue then both Cheon and his friend will die. His thoughts is cut short as his friend exclaims that the demonic energy in his body has been purified. He jumps on his friend Tae-hoon and tells him that they're alive. We see Tae-hoon's eyes pop out in shock as he thinks that this was impossible. Cheon interrupts them and tells them that he'll be leaving now, and we see Song-ju falls on his knees while bowing and thanking Cheon Daewoo and tells him that he will never forget the favor of saving his life. Tae-hoon thinks to himself that Cheon had purified demonic energy by injecting mana and that it would be impossible to do without an overwhelming amount of mana, and thinks about just who Cheon Daewoo was. Cheon then returns to his house, and we find the house looking as gloomy as ever, and he comments that luckily there seem to have been no intruders, while calling it his small and precious home. He also comments that while outing he was also able to get an unexpected income and that it was satisfying. The little mandragoras began making some noise, and Cheon asks them if they have woken up or if it had been because of the long-distance journey that their leaves were dropping. He then decides to plant them quickly. He plants them in the ground and says that it should be enough, but the mandragoras make a wong sound of dissatisfaction. Cheon comments that their expressions wasn't good and asks them if they don't like it or if it was because their habitant was forcefully moved, or if they were perhaps hungry from moving without soil. He asks them if he should give them some mana as they usually like it. The mandragora starts jumping and making happy noises after receiving mana from Cheon, and Cheon comments that they're feeling better and that they were monsters too. Behind Cheon there's a pair of sparkling eyes in the bushes, but he had already sensed it, and in his mind he says that the presence felt like the guy that the hunters were chasing. While we see the robot hiding behind the bushes looking at Cheon. Cheon thinks to himself that what does the mechanical creature want from him? And that if it has any business then it would appear in front of him. He tucks the checks away while saying he'll keep them for now and would use them when he needs it. Sitting on the ground in the cabin, Cheon dumps all the content of the luggage on the ground and decides to organize them. Inside there's a portable burner and cooking pot set, with 8 gate stones, some spare clothes and 2 sleeping bags and blankets. Cheon comments that the hunters had really come prepared and holds a packet of ramen, and wonders that the last time he had eaten it had been in the orphanage. He says he's so hungry and then decides to cook the ramen. He opens the ramen recipe, which says the first step is to fill the pot with 500 milliliters of water. And Cheon wonders if he should estimate it by weight while walking towards the stream. As he gets close to the river, the water bubbles up and 2 piranha-looking monster fishes jump out of the water and flies at him. Cheon flicks his middle finger and hits the fish on its head while commenting that people usually add something else when cooking ramen and it would be delicious if he adds fish. The second step of the recipe tells him to add various ingredients such as eggs, green onions, and etc., and we see Cheon picking up something transparent like a capsule with some unidentifiable substances inside while commenting that it is also raw and it can be used instead of eggs, and since there are no green onions there then putting in the leaves of the tree he's on should be similar to it. While holding the pot filled with the items he had collected, he comments that the ingredient preparation has been completed and that it's time to head back. As Cheon walks away, behind him a mechanical leg steps out and we see the robotic chimera walk out of the bushes while holding its stomach and comments that Cheon is cooking. As Cheon gets home, he puts the pot on the gas and lights it up and says that the instructions doesn't say when to add the fish, so he'll just boil them all together. And we see a table made from a log just some while ago. As the food starts cooking, we see it releasing some purple steam that flows toward the mandrauras, who try to cover their nose, and Cheon asks if ramen usually smells like this. The smell drifts to the mechanical robot and it takes a deep sniff and comments that it is cooking smell and that it wants to eat it too, and starts walking towards Cheon. Its leg transforms and it comments that it saw it in the lab, that humans love dogs, and we see that it has transformed into a dog and raises one of its front paw. It says that humans will help a dog if they feel pity for it, and it limps towards Cheon while whining. Cheon sees it and thinks to himself that it was the mechanical creature that has been following him, and wonders if it had pretended to be hurt on purpose to evoke his sympathy, and that judging from its actions, it seems like a young individual who doesn't know anything yet. And the creature tries to look cute as it possibly can with snot dripping from its nose. And Cheon wonders how on earth did a creature like that escape from the lab and come all the way to the demon realm. He then tells the dog that the food is all done and if it wants some too, which the dog barks to signify yes, that it does. They both look into the pot to see the contents, and Cheon wonders if he should try eating it. He gives the dog its portion and they both sit and starts eating. The dog eats happily and Cheon stops to reminisce that the taste of the food reminds him of when he was 7 years old back then in the orphanage. And that the food tasted just like that and that it was delicious. We then see the aerial view of the house with the smell from the food drifting off towards the distance. But the smell was so strong that we see the mandrauras as they are vomiting, with some having fainted. After eating, Cheon turns to the dog and tells it that since it's done eating that it could go now as he needs to clean up. The dog then limps away while raising its right front foot, and Cheon tells it that it had been limping on the left foot earlier, which gives the dog a fright as it quickly changes its leg and starts limping on the left foot and walks away while Cheon smirks.